Good morning and welcome to Church at Home with Rachael for Monday, the 20th of September. It's election day. I am inordinately excited about the fact that after I record this, I'm going to go down to the Legion in Wainwright and I'm going to vote for my local member of parliament. Maybe. Probably the person I vote for won't get elected. I'm obviously not really a conservative in my politics. I've mentioned that before. I think if I was living in a Stanfield era, and that sort of what the Conservative Party stood for then, I would probably be a middle of the road conservative. But things have changed a lot since then. So I choose from what's available, and I choose probably not to vote that way. So I will be a happy camper on Tuesday morning, tomorrow morning, when I realize that the person I voted for didn't get elected, but I had my opportunity to share my voice, and I will pray for the person who is elected, and we will move forward praying for whoever will be our prime minister, whether it remains Justin Trudeau or it might become Aaron O'Toole, or who knows, maybe it might be Jagmeet Singh. You never know. However, today we are going to participate as a community, a countrywide community in exercising our rights in democracy and having our opportunity to choose, to participate in choosing the person that we will represent us on the world stage, the people who will represent us in Ottawa, the people who will meet with us and will listen to us and will have integrity. And maybe I'm being a little bit Pollyanna in hoping that that might happen, but it won't happen if we don't expect it to. For people in my congregations in the past, and I think probably the people in my congregations of today, you'll probably know this about me, that I have very high expectations of people. I also have very high expectations of myself, and you're allowed to hold me to those. So, like, that's the way it works. But I've always sort of figured, if you don't expect much of someone, then why would they give you anything? Why would they try hard? If you think about Olympians, if their coaches and the world didn't expect them to try hard, why would they? Now, there are some people in the world who are just driven. There are people in this world who really do things not because they are encouraged to do so or because they have to do something or because there's some kind of incentive, but they're just driven to do that. Some people, it's kindness. It's very difficult to get a truly kind person to be mean. But it's not hard to have them be kind. It isn't necessarily because someone goes around, telling them, remember to be kind today. It's just a part of who they are. But I've always found that with people, students, people, youth I've had in my congregations, people in my book studies and my Bible studies, people are willing to work to the highest common denominator. I think people don't believe that. But if we sort of expect people, like for instance, if I had a Bible study and the lowest common denominator was simply showing up, and I really didn't expect anybody to read the passage or to think about it or pray about it or even contribute, then we would have a pretty dull, very didactic Bible study with me standing at the front doing the Charlie Brown wah 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 thing, the teacher, because nobody in the class would be interested. They wouldn't be engaged. If I just said to them, just show up. I don't expect anything of you. They'd probably fall asleep. But when I say to people, we're going to do this study, and I expect we're going to have some really strong conversation, and we're going to pray, and we're going to read, and I'd like you to read this ahead of time. Quite often people have. I remember we had a Bible study in St. James in Halifax, and we did Bible study quite often on Wednesday mornings. And then after a while, they said to me, could we maybe study a book? I was like, absolutely. I love book studies. So we started studying these books. And at first, they were sort of softballs. They were not difficult books to read. And the conversation was pretty quickly, our hour went quickly because the chapters were sort of not really that thought-provoking. But then they started coming at me with, in June when we finished up for the summer, they're like, okay, so for next year, here are some ideas. And we had some wild ones. We did Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis. And that one had everybody on their knees. We really struggled with that one. And yet they didn't quit on me. They really did try. They read the chapters, and we had solid conversation, and we worked really hard. And we grew intellectually, and we grew in our faith. We did some Shelby Spong. John Spong recently, I think last week, died, and he was known for some really outrageous, outlandish concepts of what it is to be Christian. But the fact is that when you actually read his books, the titles were intriguing, but his arguments were really compelling. Not everybody agreed with everything he had to say, but you couldn't really throw anything else. You couldn't really throw what he said away. He was really thought provoking. He was a very faithful Christian in a world that was changing, in a world that was looking at what does Christianity look like in the 1950s and 60s and 70s and 80s, and what is it looking at now in the 1990s, the 2000 and aughts, and the teens, and now the 20s. He really was engaging new generations and thinking about what of Christianity. We also did some Rabbi Kushner, I think, when bad things happen to good people. We really worked hard, and I was so proud of that group because they did such a great job. They would go home each week and they would read, and I'd sometimes get phone calls, but what does this mean? Or I'm really struggling with this. And it was okay if you didn't get the reading done because you were struggling with it. It wasn't okay to just quit and not bother to do it. And the whole group worked really hard. And we had a couple people in the group who really struggled with reading, and yet they did their best, and everybody in the group really encouraged them. And our conversation then taught both those who were able to read the texts and those who weren't. And we all grew from that. So having high expectations, I think it's a good thing. It calls us to move toward something better than we were. And we have, to be quite honest, for those of us who are Christians, who go to church and participate in liturgies and try to live the life that the Christian church says this is how God calls us to live, we are called to high expectations. We are called to extremely high expectations. Now, we also have the gift of Jesus Christ, who recognizes that sometimes we fall short of those expectations, and yet we don't fail then. He lifts us up, dusts us off, and puts us back on the road. But we don't live to the lowest common denominator. We live to the highest common denominator. So I think that's what we as Christians need to consider when we go to cast our ballot, and then the hard work that we do after our ballot has been cast. I'm going to cast my ballot first thing in the morning because I have to go to Edmonton for this afternoon for the third of my 7 Cree teachings with Elder Russell and the group that we have gathered, a group of beautiful people who are learning and experiencing something that we had never experienced before. And that's what this is all about. We are about to elect, I'm about to go cast my ballot for someone, and whoever across the country is elected, they are about to do a new thing. Even if they've been members of parliament before, even if the Liberals are elected and have a minority or a majority government, and they've done it before, the truth is that everything beginning now is a brand new day. And so we need to do our work for them. We need to pray for our members of parliament and for our new or returning prime minister. We need to research things and not just go by Twitter and Facebook and social media and Instagram and what those things say. We need to challenge those who challenge. We need to ask for truth, and we need to demand it. We need to hold the feet of the people we elect to the fire, that they would do the proper work for us. But then we also need to tend to them and help them, support them and encourage them, speak to them, reach out to them, write to them, and help them to know that we aren't just going to complain, but we want to participate in keeping Canada as a place where we want to live, a place where we feel free to vote, to speak our minds with integrity and recognizing the dignity of every human being. So I'm about to go and vote. How about you? If you've already voted, either at an early polling station or in the mail, God bless you for doing that. If you haven't voted yet, get your shoes on, find your voting card, and get down to your local office, because it's really important that we do our due diligence if we expect them, the elected people, to do theirs. Have a great election day, everybody. I will see you tomorrow um, with Church at Home, and I may or may not talk about the election. I might wait till Wednesday. We'll see. We'll see how it all goes, how I'm feeling, what I'm thinking. Either way, God bless you as you go to vote.